Sofia Koval openly prayed in court as she waited for her case to be called. Her father, also in court, withheld for allegedly beating her grandmother to death.
Despite her age, Sofia was
The courtroom doors swing open. Sofia Koval walks in. 14 years old, blonde hair pulled back, blue eyes scanning the gallery like she's entering a cafeteria, not a murder trial. She sits, crosses her legs, smiles. The prosecutor stands, jaw tight. Her grandmother's autopsy photos slide across the projector screen. Bruises mapped like continents across fragile skin. 79 years old. Survived Stalin's purges. Lived through Nazi occupation. Made it to America. Died on her apartment floor. Alone with her granddaughter. Sofia glances at the images. Yawns. Covers her mouth with 2 fingers, polite, like she's in church. A woman in the front row gasps. A man shakes his head, whispering something to the person beside him. The judge's knuckles whiten as he grips his gavel. She thinks this is nothing, that she'll walk out. Phone returned. Life resumed. That being young means consequences bounce off like rain on glass. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. But 90 minutes before the 911 call, the apartment was silent. No screaming, no argument. Just the sound of fists meeting flesh over and over, while the clock ticked past midnight. Paramedics would later say they'd never seen anything like it. Not from someone so small, so young. Her father found her sitting on the couch, hands washed, breathing steady. He stumbled into the bedroom and saw his mother crumpled against the wall, eyes half open, skin mottled purple and red. He screamed, grabbed his phone, dropped it, picked it up again. Sofia didn't move, didn't cry, didn't explain. When the police arrived, she told them something that made veteran detectives step outside for air. But the most disturbing detail, it happened with her bare hands. What could make a child do this to the woman who raised her? 3 months earlier, Sofia stepped off a plane at Fort Lauderdale International. Refugees poured through customs, families clutching documents, children holding stuffed animals, eyes red from crying and sleepless flights. The war in Ukraine had torn her life apart, scattered her family across Europe and America, like seeds in wind. Her father gripped her hand as they walked through the terminal. He'd worked 3 jobs back home: mechanic, delivery driver, night security. Now he'd work 3 jobs here. Anything to keep her safe. Anything to give her a chance. The school district welcomed her with open arms. Teachers smiled, spoke slowly, gestured with their hands when English failed. She sat in the back of ESL classes, nodding, scribbling notes. Within weeks, she was forming sentences. Within a month, she was laughing with classmates, sharing lunch, scrolling through their phones during passing periods. The local news ran a story. Ukrainian teen finds hope in Florida. They filmed her at her desk, pencil in hand, eyes bright. The principal called her resilient. A guidance counselor called her inspiring. The community called her proof that the American dream still worked. Except the teachers started noticing things. Sofia would smile one moment, then her face would go blank, like someone unplugged her. She'd snap at a classmate over nothing, then apologize with a sweetness that felt rehearsed. One girl told her mom, "It's like she's 2 different people." Her father brushed it off. Trauma takes time to heal. She watched her neighborhood burn. She heard bombs. She left her mother behind in Kyiv because there wasn't room in the car. Of course she's struggling. Of course she has bad days. But behind her progress reports and bright classroom smiles, something cold was taking shape. Something that didn't care about second chances or fresh starts. What happens when survival instincts turn into something else entirely? Yevgenia Koval was 79 years old and had survived more than most people could imagine. Born in 1945, she grew up in the shadow of war. Buildings reduced to rubble, fathers and brothers buried in mass graves, winters so cold that neighbors burned furniture just to stay alive. She watched the Soviet government take her father in the night, never saw him again. She learned to keep her head down, her voice quiet, her thoughts to herself. She married young, raised 2 sons in a cramped apartment where hot water was a luxury and meat appeared on the table twice a month if they were lucky. When the USSR collapsed, she thought the hardest part was over. But then came the chaos. Currency worthless, pensions evaporated, crime spilling into the streets. She buried her husband in 2003, buried her younger son in 2017. Still, she kept going, kept baking bread on Sundays, kept singing old songs while she washed dishes. When her son, Sophia's father, called and said they were leaving Ukraine, she didn't hesitate. America. Safety. A place where bombs didn't fall and soldiers didn't knock on your door. She packed 1 suitcase, left everything else behind. She arrived in Lauderdale Lakes and moved into a small apartment with her son and granddaughter. She couldn't speak English, but she learned to smile at neighbors, to nod when they waved. She cooked the same meals she'd cooked for decades: borscht, pierogi, pickled vegetables. She believed this was her reward for enduring so much. A quiet ending, a soft place to rest. Sophia helped her sometimes, peeled potatoes, folded laundry, sat beside her on the couch while they watched dubbed soap operas. Yevgenia would stroke her granddaughter's hair and think, "We made it. We're safe now." But Sophia had started looking at her differently. Not with love, not with gratitude, with something closer to irritation. Like Yevgenia was an obstacle, a problem that needed solving. And one night, a cell phone became the spark that lit the fuse. Sophia's fingers moved fast, texting, scrolling, liking, commenting. Her father had noticed weeks ago, the glow of the screen lighting her face at 2 in the morning, the way she'd flinch when he walked into the room, angling the phone away so he couldn't see. He asked who she was talking to. She said friends. He asked why it couldn't wait until morning. She said he wouldn't understand. He asked to see the phone. She refused. So one night, he took it, walked into her room while she slept and unplugged the charger. She woke up as he was leaving, eyes snapping open, voice rising. "That's mine. You'll get it back when you can follow the rules," he said. He was tired, exhausted from double shifts at the warehouse and the grocery store. He didn't have the energy to argue. She didn't yell, didn't cry, just stared at him with a flatness that made his stomach twist. He told himself it was normal. Teenagers and their phones. Everyone fought about it. She'd cool off by morning. He had plans that night. A friend from work invited him over for dinner. Another Ukrainian family. People who understood what it felt like to start over. He didn't want to leave Sophia alone. But Yevgenia was there. His mother. The woman who'd raised him. She'd be fine. Before he left, he checked on them. Yevgenia was folding blankets in the living room. Sophia sat on the couch, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the wall. She didn't look at him when he said goodbye. He closed the door, locked it from the outside, walked down the stairwell and into the warm Florida night. Inside the apartment, Sophia's silence wasn't obedience. It was pressure building behind a dam. The door closes. The clock starts ticking. At 11 p.m., the first blow landed. Investigators would piece together the timeline later. Text messages on the father's phone, security footage from the building's entrance, the medical examiner's report. They'd estimate the attack started around this time, maybe a few minutes earlier. Neighbors heard thumps, dull, repetitive sounds that could have been furniture being moved or someone dropping books. One woman turned up her television. A man in the unit below put in earbuds and went to sleep. No one called the police. No one knocked on the door. Inside, Yevgenia's voice was soft, pleading, trying to calm her granddaughter down. Sophia didn't answer, didn't shout, didn't say a word. She just moved forward, shoulders squared, hands curling into fists. Yevgenia raised her arms, instinct, self-preservation, the same reflex that had kept her alive through decades of danger. But this time, there was no escape, no neighbor to run to, no authority to call. Just her granddaughter, blank-faced and relentless. One strike, then another, then another. The sound echoed in the small apartment, absorbed by thin walls and old carpet. Yevgenia tried to shield her face, her ribs, her stomach, tried to crawl toward the bedroom. Her body, fragile from age and a lifetime of hardship, couldn't hold up. Sophia didn't stop, didn't pause to catch her breath or reconsider. Her hands ached, her knuckles split. Blood, hers and her grandmother's, smeared across the floor. Still, she kept going. Minutes stretched into an hour. An hour crept toward 90 minutes. The apartment grew quieter. Yevgenia's movements slowed, then stopped. Within minutes, it was clear. This wasn't a moment of anger. It was 90 minutes of something far worse. The medical examiner pulled back the sheet. Bruises covered Yevgenia's arms. Defensive wounds, they're called. Purple marks across her forearms where she'd tried to block the blows. Her face, swollen beyond recognition. Ribs cracked on both sides. Contusions stretched across her torso like a map of violence. The detective standing beside the table had worked homicides for 17 years. Gang shootings, domestic disputes turned deadly, drug deals gone wrong. He'd seen bodies pulled from canals and found in abandoned warehouses. But this made him step back, hand covering his mouth. Bare hands, the examiner said, pointing to the patterns. No weapon, just sustained impact over an extended period. I'd estimate 90 minutes, maybe longer. The detective's partner, a woman named Keisha Marshall, had interviewed the father earlier that morning. He'd collapsed in the hallway outside the apartment, sobbing, asking God why his mother had to suffer one more time. Keisha had held his shoulder while paramedics checked his blood pressure. She'd seen grief before. This was something else. Grief mixed with confusion, like he couldn't make the pieces fit. Because how does a 14-year-old girl do this? Not in a moment of rage, not in self-defense, but for 90 minutes straight, methodical and cold. Paramedics had noted something else when they arrived. Yevgenia's body was positioned near the bedroom door, arms stretched forward. She'd been trying to crawl, trying to get away. Her granddaughter had followed her, step by step, finishing what she started. Keisha flipped through her notes. No signs of a struggle in the initial sense. No overturned furniture. No broken lamps. Just blood on the carpet, and a grandmother who'd tried, until her last breath, to survive. But what Sophia said afterward stunned even the most experienced investigators. The interrogation room was small. Concrete walls, metal table, 2 chairs bolted to the floor. A camera blinked red in the corner. Sophia sat with her legs crossed, leaning back like she was waiting for a bus. Detective Marshall entered first, followed by her partner, a man named Darnell Brooks. He set a folder on the table, didn't open it, just watched Sophia's face for a reaction. Nothing. No fear, no shame. Just boredom. "Do you know why you're here?" Keisha asked. Sophia shrugged. "I guess because of my grandma." "Your grandma's dead, Sophia." "I know." Darnell leaned forward. "You want to tell us what happened?" She sighed, like the question annoyed her. She was old, like really old. She could barely walk. Her hands shook when she tried to hold things. She was in pain all the time. Keisha and Darnell exchanged a glance. Keisha's pen hovered over her notepad. "So you helped her?" "Yeah." Sophia's voice was flat, matter of fact. "She was already dying. I just helped her die faster." The room went silent. The camera kept recording. Darnell's jaw tightened. Keisha set her pen down, slow and deliberate, like she needed a moment to process what she'd just heard. "You think killing her was helping?" Keisha's voice stayed steady, but her eyes were sharp. Sophia nodded. "She was suffering. Like an animal that's too sick to live. You put them down, right? That's what people do." Darnell stood, walked to the corner, turned his back. He didn't trust himself to speak. Keisha stayed seated, watching this child, this refugee who'd survived war, who'd been welcomed into schools and community centers, talk about her grandmother like she was a burden that needed eliminating. No tears, no second guessing, no moment where she realized what she'd done. Just cold logic that made no sense to anyone but her. And the courtroom would soon see that same terrifying calm. The trial began on a Tuesday. The courthouse in Fort Lauderdale filled fast. Refugees from the local Ukrainian community, reporters with cameras, advocates who'd worked with Sophia after she arrived. They packed the gallery, whispers bouncing off the high ceilings. Sophia walked in, wearing a blue dress, hair braided neatly. She looked like she was attending a school assembly. She smiled at someone in the crowd, a classmate maybe, or a teacher. The woman didn't smile back. The prosecution opened strong. Photos of Yevgenia appeared on the screen, before and after. Before, standing in her kitchen, apron dusted with flour, eyes crinkled from smiling. After, the autopsy images. The gallery gasped. One man stood and left, hand pressed to his mouth. Sophia glanced at the screen, looked away, studied her fingernails. The defense attorney, a man named Carter Williams, argued trauma, war displacement, separation from her mother during the evacuation, psychological damage that hadn't been treated. He spoke for 20 minutes, voice rising and falling, painting Sophia as a victim of circumstances beyond her control. The jury listened. Some nodded. Others stared at Sophia, trying to find the broken child Carter described. But all they saw was a girl who seemed unbothered, who crossed her legs, who yawned twice and didn't bother covering her mouth the second time. The prosecutor stood for rebuttal. played the audio from the interrogation. Sophia's voice, tinny through the courtroom speakers. She was already dying. I helped her die. The jury shifted in their seats. One woman closed her eyes. A man in the back row shook his head. Sophia kept smiling, like she knew something they didn't, like she believed deep down that none of this would stick, and she believed she was untouchable until the judge stood up. Judge Raymond Hughes had been onto the bench for 32 years. He'd sentenced gang members, white-collar criminals, repeat offenders who couldn't stay clean for more than 6 months. He prided himself on staying neutral, on weighing evidence without emotion. But this case had gotten under his skin. He stood. The courtroom fell silent. Sophia looked up, smile still faint on her lips. "Sophia Koval," he began, voice steady but hard. "I've read the reports. I've seen the evidence. I've listened to your statement." He paused. Let the weight settle. "Your grandmother survived more in her lifetime than most people could imagine. War, famine, occupation. She came to this country hoping for peace, for safety, and you took that from her." Sophia's smile flickered. Just for a second. "You showed no remorse, no understanding of what you've done. You treated her life like it was yours to end." He looked down at the paperwork in front of him. "The state of Florida allows juveniles to be charged as adults in cases of exceptional cruelty. This qualifies." The defense attorney stood. "Your Honor," Judge Hughes raised his hand. "I've made my decision." He looked back at Sophia. 3 years in juvenile detention, followed by deportation to Ukraine upon release. The courtroom erupted. Whispers turned to shouts. Someone clapped. Someone else cursed. Sophia's face cracked, not with tears, but with something raw. Fear. Real, unfiltered fear. She leaned forward, whispered to her attorney. He shook his head. She whispered again, louder. "I want to stay here." The judge didn't respond, just gathered his papers and walked off the bench. The bailiff moved toward Sophia. She stood, legs shaking now, eyes darting around the room like she was looking for an escape. But consequences had finally caught up. Lauderdale Lakes changed after the trial. Parents held their kids tighter. Teachers watched for signs they'd missed before. The blank stares, the quick shifts in mood, the smiles that didn't reach the eyes. The refugee community, once celebrated for their resilience, now faced questions, suspicion, doubt. Schools updated their protocols. Counselors received training on trauma responses. Social workers flagged cases where isolation and displacement might be creating pressure points. The question everyone asked, could this have been prevented? Some said yes, others weren't sure. Trauma doesn't come with instructions. It doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it hides behind good grades and polite answers. Sometimes it waits until no one's looking. Sophia waits now in a detention center north of Miami. 3 years. Then a plane ticket back to a country she barely remembers. A place where her mother still lives, if she's still alive. A place where war might still be raging, or might have ended, leaving only ruins. People wonder what she'll become, if she'll ever understand what she did, if remorse will find her in a quiet moment, years from now, when she's older and the world has forced her to grow up. Or if she'll stay the same, cold, detached, viewing life as something to manage, to control, to end when it becomes inconvenient. And as Sophia prepares for deportation, The world wonders what she will become next. If this story left you thinking, if it made you question what warning signs we miss in our communities, drop a comment below. Share your thoughts. Tell us what you think could have changed this outcome. Your voice matters, and your perspective might help someone else see what they've been missing. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got more stories that challenge, inspire, and make you think. Stories that need to be told, stories that need to be heard. Hit that bell icon so you never miss what's coming next.